So far away, Lucas, and lovely audience at home, I'd like to ask the same question. What is your favourite piece of movie tie-in merchandise?
Oh, well, not long ago on our sister channel, Wiki Weekends, we mentioned the, Batman Returns McDonald's frosted glasses, and man, like many people, I would like a piece of that pie.
The fact that there are millennials who have those in, cupboards like their parents find china is great, right? And I'm annoyed that I don't have one. If someone out there has one and they want to sell it, let me know, I'll buy it from you, because I fucking want one of those things. We're not talking about that today, we're talking about crappy Star Wars merchandise.
God damn it.
More!
It's long been known that Star Wars exists as a vehicle, in some cases, literally so, to sell toys and theme park tickets to children and adults who act like children.
This seller store was only one of 6 in the country to open for the special Midnight Star Wars promotion. The movie doesn't open until later this month. May the toys be with you.
A fact no better proven than by the time they changed the look of Kylo Ren's personal TIE fighter so that it matched a toy.
Look, Karl, if you want to just come out and call me out, you're allowed to do it.
What would I do?
But the fact you wrote an entire article seemingly calling me out for just being a Disney adult.
I'm not calling out for being a Disney adult. I'm specifically calling out the idea of grown adult men who throw shit fits over Star Wars.
Again, why did you find the need to, call me out in an article?
Lucas, do you throw shit fits over, Star Wars because there are black people and women in it? No.
No, of course not. I just tend to not give much of a shit about Star Wars anymore, but not because of those reasons, just because, it's been, 40 years since there's been a good movie?
Yes, and when I mentioned that Star Wars exists as a vehicle to sell toys, I don't just mean in the Disney age, although Disney have, of course, monetize the shit out of Star Wars. Why would they not? They paid $4 billion for it. Of course they're going to try and get their money back. But there's a story I've told a couple times on the channel before about the fact that George Lucas himself only ever saw Star Wars as a way to make money.
We looked at this as off camera, if you will. Just off camera in this trench, this little guy is running around.
So now, Kenner's taking liberties with the world of Star Wars. What would George think about that?
George Lucas loved it.
To the point where the only reason he made a prequel trilogy is because he wanted to make more money from toys. Because back in the 1970s, I think, when they did the first Star Wars movie, he signed an infamously bad deal with Kenner Toys, who no longer exist. They got bought out by Hasbro. But Kenner Toys and he inked a deal to create merchandise for Star Wars. Because people are probably familiar with the story that George Lucas waived a bunch of director's fees that he could have had in return for control over the sole merchandising rights to Star Wars. What people maybe don't know is that George Lucas then split those sole merchandising rights with Kenner Toys, with Kenner Toys receiving 95% of every dollar made from Star Wars merchandise, and George Lucas splitting a nickel with Fox.
George was never happy with the deal. He gave an interview in which he said this deal was probably the stupidest deal that had ever been done in Hollywood.
Yeah, and man was not fucking about, because when he signed that deal, he didn't think of it as that means I'm not getting much money. He was like, no, that means I've got to fart out so many toys that I do make money.
Yes, and what that has to do with the prequel trilogy, for anyone wondering, is that deal basically was cast iron. There was no way out of it for George Lucas, to the point where the lawyer who drafted the contract for Kenner specifically wrote into the contract that they would own the rights to Star Wars merchandise in perpetuity throughout the known universe, as long as they paid a $10,000 retainer to George Lucas personally every single year. And for some reason, they let that deal lapse. And the day that deal lapsed and the rights to Star Wars reverted to George Lucas in their entirety, he announced the prequel trilogy.
Shortly after that George announced that he was going to make the prequels.
I said, like, and for anyone wondering, like, is that enforceable when you, like, write into a contract throughout a known universe? Yeah, that's a common bit of parlance used in legal documents. And the lawyer for Kenner knew that it was legally enforceable, but they put that in as a piss take. So, oh, it's Star Wars, right? It'll make George Lucas laugh. George Lucas was not happy because he wasn't getting as big a cut of the pie as he wanted. And as mentioned...
But it was notoriously difficult for him to get a deal because that kind of merchandise deal was like not a thing when George Lucas was approaching toy companies.
And that's why Kenner got the deal that they did, because at the time it was considered to be very risky to make merchandise based on a film, because film wasn't seen as this thing that really stood the test of time. Like, you'd maybe make some more money in like the home market with VHS and stuff like that, but even the most successful films like Wizard of Oz, people weren't buying toys of Wizard of Oz. Right?
But maybe that's just because no one tried hard
Maybe
enough.
no one tried, but George Lucas did. But the deal that he had to sign was he got 5%, which he then had to split with Fox. So he got 2.5 cents on every dollar of Star Wars merchandise sold, which he didn't like. And as mentioned, the day that that deal lapsed and he got the sole rights to the merchandise back, just so happened to be the day that he announced that he was making a prequel trilogy, and he also announced that he would then be selling the merchandising rights for the prequel trilogy, and he got a much better deal.
A royalty rate at 5% in the original deal. The base royalty rate in this deal is 18%. We were very concerned that Hasbro would never be able to make a profit.
Yeah, essentially he did what, like, kind of Disney did to Fox, right? Of very similar kind of thing of just reduce the amount of oxygen in the room around Star Wars to nil, to the point where he could then take the merchandise rights back because they weren't worth anything anymore, and then all of a sudden start the franchise again.
Yeah, because that's the rumour. Like, there's never been any confirmation on this, but people in the know have said, well, it's very odd that George Lucas went on record multiple times saying Star Wars is done, I'm making no new Star Wars stuff. I'm not going to sign off on anything new to do with Star Wars. For a couple of years, to the point where Kenner and then later Hasbro were like, well, why would we pay $10,000 for the rights to Star Wars? The franchise is dead.
Mm-hmm.
The day they lapsed, George Lucas announced that he's making a prequel trilogy. I'm not saying, like well done him. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like, get that bag, George Lucas, and he certainly got like his bag even bigger when he sold the entire franchise, like merchandise rights and all to Disney for $4 billion. But when people talk about, George Lucas, like, the franchise was purer under his, like, leadership, no, it fucking wasn't.
I had the technology. ILM had developed digital technology to a point after Jurassic Park that I could actually consider doing some of the things that were thought about in the backstory. And so I said, well, do I finish Star Wars or do I go off and do these other things?
No, it was just that he wasn't earning enough money off it and he was mad. And respect, because, like, I'd be pissed off in his situation too.
Who wouldn't be, right? It's his idea, and then, like, he was making almost nothing comparatively off of the thing that he owned.
And I make the allusion to Disney and Fox because, like, essentially Marvel kind of gave zero stories to the X-Men and Fantastic Four for a long time to make it seem a lot less desirable for Fox to keep the rights.
Yeah, so the story, as I understand it, is that Fox signed a similarly sweet deal for them that Kenner signed with George Lucas in the 70s, where Fox basically had to pay a pittance in return for maintaining the rights to, like, the X-Men in perpetuity, and the only thing they had to do is, like, pay a small amount of money every couple of years and then make a movie, which of course they were going to do, and they got to hold on to the rights to the X-Men for as long as they kept farting those movies out. And it's never been outright confirmed, but for many years while Fox held on to the rights to the X-Men, Marvel, and by extension Disney, who owned Marvel at that point, just wrote numerous stories that killed off key characters in that universe. Like, they literally did, like, the House of M, where Wanda's like, no more mutants, done. There's no more fucking mutants. And then mysteriously, a bunch of new almost mutants sprung up who had similar power sets to mutants, but distinctly weren't mutants for legal reasons. And then,
it's like, for example, like, Miss Marvel comes from the fact there was, like, a mutagen bomb or something. It was called something similar to that.
You had the Inhumans and stuff like that, right?
And it's the Inhumans or then birthed of that. And it's like, what are the Inhumans? It's like, oh, well, they're humans, but they're mutated. It's like, oh, so they're mutants.
No. If anyone curious about, like, well, could they have just made new mutants? No, they absolutely couldn't, because the terms of the deal that Fox signed meant that if Marvel invented or introduced any new mutants or retroactively wrote a story that turned someone into a mutant who wasn't a mutant before, Fox would get the exclusive rights to make movies based on that character, which they obviously didn't want to do because they wanted to make their own movies.
Yeah, and then there's some murky waters where, for example, like, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver fell under the Avengers brand, but also fell under the Mutants brand, and that's why we saw those characters kind of, like, both Quicksilvers existing in different Fox and Disney universes at the same time. Is like, they kind of both own those characters, and it's a bit weird.
And then you had, like, Ego the Living Planet, who was technically still owned by Fox, because Fox had the rights to the Fantastic Four. And when they bought the rights to the Fantastic Four, they didn't just get the Fantastic Four, they got literally every character ever introduced in a Fantastic Four comic book. So they essentially, by buying the rights to the Fantastic Four comics, they got all of Cosmic Marvel. So the way that Disney were able to get Ego the Living Planet into Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is they basically swapped Ego for Negasonic Teenage Warhead, because they wanted to use the character for the Deadpool movie. And they didn't want to use the character, they wanted to use the name. Because Negasonic Teenage Warhead
in the comics
looks nothing like the character in the film.
Yeah, they're completely almost separate identities apart from the name.
And you are?
Negasonic Teenage Warhead.
Negasonic Teenage... What the shit? That's the coolest name ever!
Yes, and because Fox wanted to use that name, which Marvel still owned, Marvel had some wiggle room to argue for Ego the Living Planet. And like...
Which, again, they kind of only used in name, because Ego the Living Planet is not much like Ego the Living Planet in the comic books, and it is weird.
They had to either pay Fox or strike a deal where they got to use the character for free. And that's, again, no wonder they fucking just bought Fox, right? Rather than deal with that shit. Same like again, George Lucas, right? No wonder he just killed Star Wars until he got the rights back and then just started fresh.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, the most important part there is killing it first so you can do it for cheap.
Well, it's like I think when Marvel were trying to just strong arm Fox and give us back the fucking X-Men, they went as far as to kill Wolverine and release multiple statements he's absolutely definitely 100% dead forever. He's never coming back. Guess what happened when Marvel got the rights to the X-Men back? Wolverine came back to life.
With super heated claws and all that shit.
And it's to the point where there is a plot point in the X-Men comics now where on Krakoa they've basically created a mutant revival program to bring back all the mutants that they killed.
Yeah, because as you say, they went as far as just saying mutants don't exist anymore.
Yep. Scarlet Witch killed them all, and or depowered them all, and now they've had to course correct, and they've introduced a new plot point that allows them to bring back any mutant they want that they killed before their time. But that's a story for another day, and maybe one we'll cover on Wiki Weekends, Lucas, the second channel that we run.
100%. And if anyone's in the comments going, well, that just so happened to have been a storyline comic, absolute bullshit. They 100% knew what they were doing.
It reads like a shakedown to me.
Yeah.
Same thing like George Lucas, right? You can say, well, it's just a coincidence, well, it's a fucking very, very beneficial coincidence for George Lucas, right? That
the most profitable coincidence of all time. Right?
After years of telling people that Star Wars was dead, he announced the day that he got the rights to the merchandise back that he was making another one.
It's like, man, it just so happened to time out real well.
And the first thing he did is renegotiate the merchandising rights. And I should point out that to the point where he renegotiated the merchandising rights before writing the films.
Deal was signed. We hadn't even read a script. We were going totally on faith that the next movie would be wonderful.
I remember screening the first prequel, and it's the first time that, you really got a feeling of Jar Jar. And I'm like, oh no.
Okay, Star Wars is a lot of homages put together to make a brand new thing, which is basically all creative works made in the modern era, because it's hard to not make something 100% it's hard to make something 100% original. And I'd absolutely be so pissed off if I was George Lucas sitting there with the most successful franchise of all time at the time, earning no money off it.
It's like every time he, farted out like a glub shito, he knows that he's not going to make any money off it. He's going to make some, but he's not going to make as much money as he could, and that's why for years he leaned into like the special editions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, Joe, even the thing of like him constantly tinkering with like the original films. There's rumours that one of the reasons why he did that is because when he re-released the film, he got more of a cut than he did from the merchandise. So it was in his best interest to never finish Star Wars and constantly tinker with it and keep releasing new and better versions, so he could constantly keep making money that way.
McClunky.
He's arguably, decent creative, okay creative. He's a very clever businessman.
He's a very clever businessman,
at the end of the day.
And like the only reason we've talked about this for as long as we have is to establish that Star Wars has always been this. It's not just Disney who've turned it into a cash cow and only care about its like the ability to earn money from it via merchandise. That's all George Lucas cared about as well, like past a certain point.
And I get it, because I'm pretty sure 99.9% of us would also try to see the monetary value in something we've created, right?
Yeah, like one of my favourite stories about just to sum up how much of just a fucking hack he was. So it's also really funny, is when they were, I think it's Red Fly Studios, were working on a Darth Maul game. You've probably heard about this, like that Darth Maul game that never saw the light of day. That was going to be Darth Maul. It was like a detective story where they actually had lightsaber decapitations and stuff in it.
Yeah.
There's a story told by people who worked at Red Fly of when George Lucas came in to visit, and they had someone from Lucasfilm come in and tell them, okay, just a few ground rules before you meet Mr. Lucas. Number one, don't tell him how the Force works. Like, don't tell him how the Force works. Don't correct him on anything about the Force. Number two, don't mention Starkiller. Just how do you fight this man?
That's what's worse is when they don't die from the impact.
Yeah, because you know. Oh god! No! I did it again. Lucas, I got too hype. I flew too close to the sun.
Good old Starkiller.
Good old Starkiller.
Which was named after, like, as everyone knows, or most people know nowadays, like, it was originally Luke Starkiller,
which was too aggressive for a heroic character, so we changed it to Skywalker.
And that's why Starkiller is named Starkiller in The Force Unleashed as like a reference to that.
It's a nod to that, but those were the two things that people at Red Fly Studios got told of, like, don't tell George Lucas how the Force works, don't mention that dipshit from those games. And the story goes that George Lucas walked in, and during the spiel they were giving about their idea for the games, he walked over to a maquette of a character called Darth Talon, who's a Twi'lek, I believe. And it's a Twi'lek character that sports similar facial tattoos to Darth Maul, but otherwise has no connection to him in established canon. So presumably that maquette was there so they could use it for references, and they put it in the room where George Lucas was because, hey, it makes the room look nice. It's like surrounded by concept art for the game. And the story goes that George Lucas walked over to this maquette of Darth Talon, picked it up, put it next to the maquette of Darth Maul, turned around and said, they're friends. And after about 5 seconds of awkward silence, the person with the biggest balls piped up and went, they're separated by about 300 years of canon. To which George Lucas responded, maybe they're a clown.
What about, the scene where he limply throws the water bottle on the floor? What's that about? He's a vampire. Vampires do not know anger. They feign emotion.
And apparently the next half an hour of the meeting was George Lucas pulling stuff out of his arse. Like, why don't you make it a buddy cop adventure with these two characters? And like, well, how are they going to meet? Well, he's a clone, who gives a shit? Why don't you make it like Goodfellas? Or The Godfather? Or that show Burn Notice? And they're like, what? So yeah, why don't you do that? Have you seen that show? It's great. Let's make that show with these two characters. And like the people, they're like, what? This is not the game we want to make. But that's the game they had to make, and that game got shit canned because it never went anywhere. But does that not sum up like the attitude right there of, you're not allowed to correct him, you're not allowed to bring up anything he doesn't like, 5 seconds into the meeting, completely derails it to start smashing action figures together. That was his approach to creation. He's like, what?
It was, but like, I think to an extent, George Lucas was also aware of how like stupid that was, because
he had to have been, right?
There is an interview with him at like, I'm half remembering this, so like, feel free to cut out if You can't find the clip or whatever, but I'm pretty sure there's like an interview at like a Comic-Con or something where he's asked like, well, what is the origin of this thing? And he just makes something up. And the interviewer's like, oh, right, okay, I never knew that. And he's like, yeah, because I just made it up on the spot right now.
But because he created the universe, it's like anything he says instantly becomes canon, right?
Exactly, and he has a laugh about it. Of like, I don't give a shit. But you asked me a question, I came up with a shit answer on purpose, but now that can be the canon if I want it to be.
Yeah, that's the canon. Like, there's a couple of examples from people working behind the scenes, like for one of the prequel movies where Yoda gets injured. Like, they were like, oh, what colour is Yoda's blood? We've never seen Yoda's species as blood. And they asked George, it's like, green. And that's it, that's canon now, done.
Like, Yoda's green, I don't know.
And in regards to Joe, I'll mention that because we're not finished with it. So, Lucas, do you know what kind of like TIE fighter Kylo Ren flies around in? Because I've got the name of it here. Do you know the name given to it?
A TIE fighter.
That'd be a great name for it. No, it's the TIE Silencer, or more specifically, the TIE VN Space Superiority Fighter. And it's flown by Ren throughout the newest Star Wars trilogy, and it is noted in canon as being specifically tailored to his exact taste, which is why it's painted blacker than Darth Vader's charred nutsack, and is also the pinnacle of fighter technology among the New Order.
Absolute fucking cowards that they didn't call it the TIE fighter.
Let's call it the New Order. It's the First Order. Well, like, the new evil guys, right?
I'm so mad that they just didn't lean into the stupid, but of course they didn't, because Star Wars takes itself so fucking
and they
seriously.
Took Kylo Ren especially too serious. There's a great story about the making of Wreck-It Ralph 2. Do you know they go to Disneyland, the digital Disney place.
The Disney fan website, right?
And they have like a couple of cameos from I think Obi-Wan's there. There's a couple of stormtroopers. You see Darth Vader in the background.
Hey, you have a permit for that pop-up? That's unauthorized clickbait. You're coming with us, kid.
Kylo Ren was supposed to be in that scene. And supposedly Ralph or Vanellope von Schweetz were going to joke about him having mummy issues or daddy issues. Or granddaddy issues. I forget the exact nature of the joke.
Issues is the real one.
But they were going to joke about Kylo Ren being basically just a petulant child, which he kind of is in the films.
No.
And Disney no. We'll let you use stormtroopers. You can put in Obi-Wan. You can put in the Star Wars brand, but you're not allowed to make fun of Kylo Ren. They drew the line at making fun of Kylo Ren.
Shout out to that scene still, because it did give us one of the greatest moments in modern Disney, which is just the casual fits of every Disney printer.
Yeah.
If I just stare at some water. The important water. Right, of course.
And it'll never stop being annoying that there is supposedly, for years now, being someone at Disney who's been trying to push, hey, let's do a Disney princess team-up movie or TV show or something where they all team up and fight crime. And apparently Disney just don't want that to happen because they don't want to diminish the Disney princess brand. The same way they wouldn't let Kylo Ren be made fun of.
I can totally understand that line of thinking, but holy shit, a Disney casual fashion line of just all the Disney princess casual fits would go so hard, and I am so upset that it never happened.
Just the idea of that detective show with all the Disney princesses teaming up and using because they've all got superpowers. When at the end of the film where they all team up and you see they've all got superpowers. Pocahontas manipulates the wind and Moana calls in the water, and then Elsa freezes the water. You can see there being a great film where they all team up, an Avengers style movie where it's all the Disney princesses teaming up. And apparently that's been an idea that's been floating around at Disney for years, but they can never convince Disney to sign off on it because they don't want to, quote-unquote, diminish the brand.
How the fuck have we never got My Disney Academia going on?
Oh, fuck, that'd be so good, wouldn't it? That's a story for another day. But in regards to the TIE Silencer, it's introduced in The Last Jedi, so this is probably going to be the most reasonable conversation about The Last Jedi on the internet, starring two white dudes, one of whom has a beard. Right?
Yeah, it's rough because, like, it's so easy to, like, rag on those movies, but it's so hard to rag on those movies justifiably without bringing all the weirdo elements into it of, like, I don't like women or different people.
Or the fact that they actually did something interesting with the characters for the first time in 40 fucking years. And that's a conversation, again, for another day.
Really quickly want to clarify that I was saying other people have that stance. I
don't care.
I'm totally chill. I'm not sitting here going like I'm sexist and racist over that shit. I'm just, talking about the discussion that revolved around that trilogy and how awful it was.
My major issue with that film is that they don't commit to the ideas that are introduced in it, which makes the trilogy as a whole just seem listless, with no real direction or just interesting stories to be told.
I ultimately think that, like, the ballsiness of The Last Jedi, as much as it wasn't a great movie, the balls to be like, hey, Rey's parents mean nothing, Snoke is dead, let's fuck this shit up and everyone can be a Jedi.
Yes.
That was one of the coolest, like, ideas going forward, and then to just completely flip-flop on all of it.
Because
and be actually, Palpatine's back, Rey's a Skywalker, everyone's important that's a Skywalker, and it's so frustrating,
on
right?
the surface, the idea of, hey, Star Wars revolving around 6 people is fucking boring. You've been telling the story of, like, one dude for the past 40 years. Maybe not everything has to revolve around Darth Vader. Maybe we can tell a different story in this universe. Like, let's just put that to bed. Let's put the idea of Jedi to the bed and just let new stories be told. And Disney got cold feet because the response to it was, like I say, I think the critical response was mixed, which is hardly the worst thing. Like, and I'd say, like, if anything, the critical response, because the fan response is so vitriolic, it's so hard to parse any legitimate criticism out of it, to the point where I might not even put this conversation into the final video because I know the kind of comments we're going to get just by not immediately shitting on this movie.
And it wasn't the best movie, but it's more like the lack of bollocks they had to commit to any of the cool ideas that frustrated me. And, like, I did misspeak that Rey is a Palpatine, but then an adopted Skywalker. But, like, either way, that commits even harder to the idea that only, like, a few people matter in this entire world.
Right?
And it's like, it's so fucking annoying. I'm like, the ideas of The Last Jedi, I am so much more on board with. Like, when the reveal got, put out there of Rey's parents mean nothing, your parents don't matter, your lineage doesn't matter. Make what of your life and your powers you will. It seems so much cooler than just, she was a Palpatine all along.
It's like, oh, wait, so Rey is just really, really powerful without being descendant from some, like, great and, like, iconic lineage, which leans into the idea that anybody can be a hero far better than, well, actually, no, you're the most special person in the universe. Like, fuck. Oh, anyway, again, conversation for another day. In regards to
the Chosen One trope, right?
Yeah.
Like, the Chosen One trope is awful, and I'll never stop being mad about it.
It's like the end of the film, or towards the end of the film, like, you get the little kid who holds out his hand and he, like, use the Force to grab, like, the broom, right? And that hints at, okay, maybe the Jedi Order is gone, but the Force still exists, and the Force will find a way to survive, and maybe Rey will, like, go on a new path. Like, they've abandoned the idea of, like, the weird religious dogma of the Jedi, because it fucking didn't work, did it? Like, it didn't work. They were in power for 1,000 years or 10,000 years and just shit the bed instantly and, like, let the king of evil just rise and just fucking annihilate the universe.
It's weird as well because one of the like main things I'll say about the prequels that is good is that they actually, turn the Chosen One trope on its head of, like, hey, there's meant to be a prophecy about this, like, Skywalker that's going to bring balance to the Force. That must mean Anakin. And it's like, arguably, you can take what Anakin did and become Darth Vader as whether that did bring balance or not.
Well, he did, because, like, by the end of it, there's only 2 fucking Jedi left, right?
Exactly, right? So there is an argument that technically Darth Vader did do that. but also that actually maybe it wasn't Anakin they're misinterpreting and the chosen one was Luke all along. And that's one thing that I like about the prequels is that, like, they take that weird trope and just, like, you know, give it that bit of nuance.
It's better than, hey, only one person in this universe matters and it's Darth fucking Vader. Anyway, so as mentioned, the TIE silencer was introduced in The Last Jedi, and a lot of work went into its design, and specifically they wanted the TIE silencer to have a very striking, foreboding, and instantly recognisable silhouette. So, you want that, right? It's like, this is the personal, like, craft of the main villain of the movie. Of course, you want it to be instantly recognisable. You want it to be as instantly recognisable as they are, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And, like, there is a bunch different TIE fighters, like Darth Vader's TIE fighter specifically, been a piece of iconography throughout, like, Star Wars for years.
Yeah, and, like, Darth Vader's personal TIE fighter is, like, slightly bigger than the other one. He's maybe not as iconic as he is, but you still know it's Darth Vader's shit because it's slightly bigger and it stands out. Then what to do something
it's got
similar
a
with.
slightly bigger penis than every other TIE fighter does.
Because Darth Vader is slightly bigger than most of the people who's like flying those ships, right? And in the same way, they wanted Kylo Ren's personal craft to be as iconic a character as he was. And for much of production, the TIE silencer sported underslung missile pods, which added to that aforementioned silhouette. However, this changed when Rian Johnson got a copy of the TIE silencer in toy form and realised that someone at the factory had made what's known as a balls up and attached the missiles to the wings of the craft, not its body. And here's the thing, like, we're talking about a product owned and produced by the monolithic Disney Corporation. And you might think, well, surely Disney could just say, we'll fucking fix it, right? Like, it's a mistake. This is not what it looks like in the movie. Fix it. The problem is, fixing such a mistake on the toy would result in scrapping the entire production line to that point and mean that they would potentially miss, like, you know, the window to get it into stores at the same time the movie came out. As a result...
Right, so it's quicker and easier to edit a film than it is an entire production line of toys.
Exactly right there, Lucas. Yes, so Rian Johnson was forced to go back to the drawing board and instruct the people working on the movie in post-production. Hey, yeah, like Kylo Ren's like a fighter, we need to change the look. It's like, why? Well, the toy looks different, and Disney want absolute consistency between the movie and the toys they make, because that's one of the things that is the draw of those bits of merch, right? The draw of merch is that it's, you know, one-to-one with the movie. It's why Funko Pops suck ass, right? Because Funko Pops don't look like the character that they're supposedly portraying. They look like a horrible, just dead-eyed version of it that can't move.
I still think that Funko Pops are... I like to argue on the side of Funko Pops in the same way I do Amiibo. I think Funko Pops do an admirable job of giving me figures for characters I like that maybe aren't the best quality, but they are, like, there and they are pretty cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So I like building an entire collection of, like, for example, the Funko Pops of, like, all the Evolution line. Like, I got all of them.
I will agree with that sentiment of, hey, if you're a fan of insert series, getting merch of it might be prohibitively expensive, or in some cases impossible, because merch just doesn't get made of it. But there's going to be a Funko Pop made of something from that show, usually something very specific and obscure in a lot of cases, right? Because that's one of the things that they do with Funkos, right? They release like special edition versions of like character costume changes and stuff, which you don't often get figures of, that at the very least aren't going to break the bank, and you can pick one up for, you know, like 10, 15 quid.
Exactly, yeah. And I'll never argue that they are the best figures ever or anything, but it's like, okay, for 100 quid I can get all the Evolutions in one line, like in a cool looking figure set.
And they match. They're
cool.
in, like, it's not the best art style, but at least they're in a consistent art style.
Whereas if I wanted to do that with like amazing quality figures,
or plushes,
that cost me hundreds and hundreds, and I'm like, there is a place for both, and I wouldn't argue that Funko are the better option, but they are the cheaper option.
Yes, and you know, for the price conscious individual out there who just wants to celebrate or enjoy that fandom, that is an option that's there for them. But I still think Funko Pops suck, because the fact that they have such a stranglehold over like the merch industry to the point where you'll go into like any store, like I guess for Americans, like your Hot Topics, your Game Spots. For us, it's like Game and HMV. You go to the section where you can buy merch, and it's just all Funkos. It's like, I'd like some choice.
That's the thing is, like, obviously, Game is, it's kind of on its arse at this point, and it's like they've kind of reduced themselves to just a merchandise store. Like, you can barely get games at Game anymore, but they're pivoting in a real shit way. But yeah, that's basically all you can find now.
Yeah, and bringing it back to Kylo Ren's silencer, the specific scene they had to change, because this actually occurred early enough in production where they didn't have to change too much, but they still needed to change something. And as mentioned by you, Lucas, it was quicker and easier and more cost-effective to change the movie than it was to change the toy. But the specific scene that needed to be redone was the scene where Kylo Ren shoots a missile at the bridge where Princess Leia is stood. So do you know the bit where Princess Leia gets blown out into space and nearly dies and then uses the Force?
Oh, shit, yeah.
And, like, flies back, which is like, admittedly, that scene is fucking hilarious.
She, like, T-poses back into existence.
Which we've made a joke about before in the past, of, like, T-pose Leia, of, like, just the edit of, like, Princess Leia being, like, T-pose flying through, like, the flagship at the end of the movie. For me, nothing sums up, like, Star Wars more than the fact that this emotionally weighty scene had to be scrubbed through frame by frame so that the thing killing the character's mother who's firing it had to be changed to match a fucking toy in our world.
Yeah, and I don't know what's worse, like that, or the fact that Funko Pops will be released early enough to give movie spoilers.
And Lucas, you mentioned there the idea of, like, toy spoilers, which is like, they fucking suck, right? But I don't really know what the solution to that is, because it takes longer to make the toys in some cases than it does the fucking movie.
Yeah, but, like, I got spoiled on Giant Man in Captain America Civil War, like, a month before the movie came out. Because of a Funko Pop, and I'm like, you could at least think about, like, the release schedule of these toys, right?
It's the classic, right? There's always, like, a Play Arts figure or something like that just shows, like, oh, like, here's the character in their dead version. You're like, wait, what? No, you don't do that.
Yeah, it's one thing when you see, like, a leak of a database online of, like, here's what the toys are going to be in store, or something weird like that. The fact I just walked into a HMV and saw a spoiler in toy form a month before the movie came out, it felt real bad.
It did, yeah. And, I thought, to end on Lucas, I've gone and got just a couple of pieces of merch that I own, because I do collect merch for things that I like and fan bases that I'm a part of, but I like to collect weird, obscure, or just unusual bits of merch. And two examples I have in front of me now are, I own, because I love Dragon Ball. We're a big fan of Dragon Ball. Something I own, which is official, which is an official piece of licensed Dragon Ball merchandise, is... So you see Frieza right there? This is, Lucas, a Swatch watch that looks like Frieza. And it is officially...
I've seen you wear this watch.
It is officially endorsed by Dragon Ball. It is real. It is a Swatch watch. It cost me a not insignificant amount of money. It's designed to look like Frieza. It's even got, like, on the back, you can see, like, the design of his tail there. And my friend, who I'm the best man at his wedding, right, his engagement present from me was, I got this watch, and I got him one that's, like, based on Goku.
Hell god,
so he's got the Goku one, which has, like, the turtle skull symbol on the back right there. But just the fact that people go and go, or when people see me wear it, it's like, is that a watch for a Dragon Ball watch? I'm like, yeah, it is, and it's real. It's real, man. It's great. And the other piece of merch, Lucas, is one that you also own. This is a piece of merch that both myself and you own. So, Lucas, I love Pokemon.
Oh, you're going to show Mr. Wiglet.
So, Lucas, explain what this is to the folks at home.
So, this is Wiglet. This is a, 10 1/4 inch plush.
About that, yeah.
That the Pokemon Company released of Wiglet themselves, and if people aren't aware of Wiglet, it is a Pokemon from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that is basically a beach version of Diglett.
Yes.
And it's based off like some sea worms that poke themselves out of the ground.
Well, those eels right that poke out and like just stick their heads out of the sand. But yeah, it's a real Pokemon. It really exists, and this is an official.
Yeah.
So I've still got like the tag on it there. It's an official like Pokemon plush released by the Pokemon Company, and just it looks fucking hilarious on a shelf, right?
It does, and like me and you, well, I think we were like, you know, a few drinks in, and I'd spotted it on Twitter of like the Pokemon Company are releasing Wiglet plushes of all things, and let me tell you how quickly they were in Karl's basket to be bought.
Yeah, because I looked at that and went, that's going to sell out immediately, and they're not going to restock that because they must not have realised it looks like a dick. We're not going to leave it implied it looks like a dick.
Wait, what?
So just like, yeah,
What do you mean, Karl?
I bought one for me and one for Lucas. So myself and Lucas both just own one of these Wiglet plushes. And there's like a photo somewhere, I'll track it down, of like when they arrived at my house when we were recording one day. And it's just me and you wearing Hawaiian shirts touching our Wiglets.
I never realised there was some kind of phallic meaning behind it, Karl.
And it's official, so I own it. And then the other thing, this is not official, but it's just something that I own. And no one else on Earth will own one of these because they were made like custom in Laos. And it's a friend of mine because they know I love like collecting like silly things. When they were in Laos, they got me a wallet. And this is a wallet made by a guy in Laos called Mr. Charlie. Not Charlie, Chalee. And they are dinosaur-themed wallets with motivational slogans on them. And the first one is this little dinosaur here, and it says on it, "Dinosaur is gone." But if I'm not in the mood for dinosaur is gone, I've also got a second one here, which has another dinosaur on it, where the logo says "Dinosaur was gone." So depending on what mood I'm in, dinosaur either is gone or was gone.
Why the fuck have I never seen you out in public with one of those?
Well, it's because it's not in my pocket. It's in my wallet, man. So it's like dinosaur was gone, dinosaur is gone. And I have many, many things like that I could have brought in to show off, but we can save those for another video because we'd be here all day if I did that.
That's true.
And in regards to like Star Wars, there was like plenty of Star Wars merch that I want to own, but I'd want to specifically own the bad stuff. Like I would absolutely love one of those like Jar Jar Binks like lollipops where it's like his tongue. Remember that? Which looks absolutely awful.
Yeah.
Or the other one that I want to own is there's a Star Wars colouring book that they released, but it's like the Empire colouring book and it's all stormtroopers, which are white.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So it's like a colouring book where it's like Kylo Ren or Darth Vader and some stormtroopers. Like, well, just what do I need to colour in?
Well, there's that creator who... I see them on TikTok, but they're everywhere, right? Who has, like, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Rug.
Oh, yeah, Xiran Zhao.
Yes. You may be able to find a TikTok of theirs that you've recently put out of their Jar Jar Binks collection that includes many of those, like, little lollipop mouths and also just, like, an entire life-size Jar Jar Binks figure.
A Jar Jar Binks KFC bucket topper, or if you're a vegetarian, a Frisbee! A Jar Jar Binks lunchbox to keep all your cherry-flavored tongs that go with the Jar Jar Binks Monster Mouth, which I have 14 of.
So I'm a big fan of the person mentioned there, Xiran Zhao. They're an author. They wrote, I believe it's Iron Widows, which is going to be a motion picture. And they're like famous for like that, but also they're the person who... trying to get Yu-Gi-Oh! Recognized as an Olympic sport. And the other thing they're known for is their official author profile photo is them wearing a cow onesie. They also, as you mentioned, own a shit ton of Yu-Gi-Oh! Memorabilia, including like an entire king-size bedspread of a Blue Eyes White Dragon.
But apparently also have, like, one of the most impressive Jar Jar Binks collections of memorabilia I've ever seen.
And that's the kind of energy I want to go for when it comes to my my fandom and my collecting. Of like, I don't want to own, like a Darth Vader figure, because everyone's got a Darth Vader figure. I want to own, like, like the Glub Shitto. Or a Jar Jar Binks toy, right? I want to own the thing that people are like, why do you have that? And the answer is, because no one else does.
And you know what? If you're intimidated by that energy of walking into a room and seeing a life-size Jar Jar Binks, the entire, like, merchandise setup, you don't deserve them. Oh, it's peak energy.
It is, right?
there.
And you know what? Like, that's what I'm going to end on. Something positive, something wholesome, and something cool.